Hello, and welcome to this Knowledge Group webcast. Trust me, I'm an engineer, escaping the traps of social engineering. My name is Elizabeth. I'll serve as the moderator for the event today. We're going to get right to our speaker in just a moment, but I would like to quickly point out over the next few slides, you will find information about our speaker, his firm, and answers to some of our most frequently asked questions. On the screen, you're also going to see a link to sign up for our 14-day free trial, and this gives you access to some of our live and recorded programs. During the webcast, you will be sent a survey via email asking for your feedback regarding the experience at today's event. We would like to take a moment now to thank our partner sponsor, Cyberint. Their information is on the screen. I also want to thank all of our speakers and attendees for joining us today, listening live or on demand. Let me introduce you to our speaker today, Dr. Guy Almog, a cyber threat intelligence team leader with Cyberint, with over a decade of experience in fraud detection as well as in academic research. He holds a PhD from the Department of Asian Studies at the university. And again, we are so grateful for our speaker today and encourage your questions for him, again, at any time utilizing that Q&A tab. With that, we're going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to our speaker today. Guy, when you're ready.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I hope you'll have some fun and also maybe learn a thing or few about how to protect yourself and your organizations against social engineering. Now, before I go into it, you see also you have a nice QR code and a URL there, right? So you can, while we're in the screen, scan it. We have a few free Amazon gift cards. I think something around 20 with 50, somewhere between $50 to $100. This is what we could gather. So for the first 20 scanners, right, you can get a nice present. And I'll jump it also in a few slides again. So if you miss this one, you'll have a chance for another one. Now, the agenda for today, right, is first we'll start with a basic intro to social engineering. I promise not to be too boring, and you also have, as you know, most of it is very easy to find online, right? So I'll try to make it as short as possible. We'll have some discussion on the life cycle of social engineering. And I think this is will be the most interesting part for most of you, right? We'll see some very recent examples from the clear, deep, and dark web of live social engineering, right? Real examples from actual cases. Some of them might still be active, and I'll explain more when we'll get there. Of course, we'll also have some protection tips throughout the presentation as well, but also in the end, we'll try to be more focused and give you helpful tools, right, to protect yourself and your organizations. And hopefully we'll also have time for Q&As. Okay, so let's start with what is social engineering. And you can go online, you'll find a lot of very similar definitions, right? I don't want to go here too much into the like small details of each definition and what's better, but to give my own very short definition. Basically, when we're talking about social engineering in terms of cybersecurity, usually we're dealing with tricking people into making mistakes, or more specifically, cyber mistakes, which are very broadly giving or exposing sensitive and personal information, and or clicking on something that you should not click on, allowing access to someone, digital or physical, to some place that they shouldn't get inside. Okay, these are all classic examples of social engineering. This is the goal, right, of social engineering. And of course, once the threat actor has this information or digital or physical, right, goods. They can exploit the individual and the organization, and we'll see some examples. So some of the most common, and by the way, we'll have a lot of interesting pictures and examples in a few seconds. Okay, I just want to go over some of the more common methods of social engineering, so we'll know like we're on the same page. Some of them you're probably very familiar with. For example, phishing. I assume everyone on this call at least knows about phishing, right? Usually it comes as a fake website that looks like something that you know, impersonate, let's say, your bank or your insurance company, or could be anything, right? Your email provider, but it's actually a malicious website that will steal your credentials. Of course, you also have phishing via emails. You can have phishing via SMS, voice calls. So you have different kinds of phishing. This is one of the most common attack vectors with social engineering. The next one is impersonation. Again, very broad term, but the tool here is that threat actors are creating fake accounts on social media, right? On Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all different kinds of social media, but also they can create fake accounts on emails, or they can just impersonate someone in person or on the phone, right? So we have different kinds of impersonations that can be used in social engineering. Next example is baiting. Baiting, if the two first approaches are very direct and active, baiting is a bit more passive way to social engineer. And we'll have some examples in a second, but basically you just put the bait, right, somewhere, and you wait for the victim to be hooked on the bait, and then the information is exposed, or something bad usually happens. Tailgating is another example of physical social engineering. In this case, you're going to your office, let's say, right? The office is well protected. You have a key, you have your fingerprint maybe to open the door, but someone is just walking behind you, and once the door is open, he or she just goes in after you. So again, this is one example of, in this case, physical social engineering. Waterholing is another form of social engineering in the digital realm. Basically, the threat actors, in this case, they take control or exploit something that the user, the victim, is used to, right, or trusts. For example, let's say you are using a specific website daily, right? But the website itself, maybe the threat actor hacked into the website, and now they have control behind the stage, and they can social engineer you, since you assume everything there is okie dokie, but actually they are behind the scene taking your information. So before we see the actual examples, I just wanted also to stress, to emphasize here in my opinion, the three most important factors in social engineering. Now, these are the factors of good, right, of successful social engineering attempts. A lot of time you see scammers which are not extremely successful or convincing, of course, but let's say the best social engineering are done with three main factors. So the first, it needs to look good, okay? It needs to look like the impersonation, if they're doing impersonation, needs to seem official, real, like as much a minimum of red flags as possible, right? And again, this is something that threat actors are getting better and better at. Next, a sense of urgency is something that a lot of these scams are eventually doing, right? Maybe not in the beginning. Sometimes they wait a bit, but when they need to strike, they do it with a sense of urgency. And again, it can be a prize. For example, hey, if you don't go in right now, you won't win this prize. Or hey, if you won't go in right now, like you lose the access to your account. And they're playing on that sense of urgency. The next one is patience of the threat actor, of the social engineer, because a lot of time social engineering takes not 1 day or 1 hour. Sometimes it does, but in a lot of cases, especially with very sophisticated scammers, they can take days and weeks, right? They want to build trust, and then once the time is ready, they strike, and the blow is very painful, could be for the organization or for the individual. So let's have a look at a few examples. Let's start with a phishing example. Okay, in this example, you see supposedly a login page for Amazon. Okay, and by the way, all the examples I took just a few days or weeks before this presentation. I prepared this from scratch and just took examples that I see online. So on first glance, let's say you got a link to your phone or your email, you got to this website, maybe you will just log in without checking anything else because you have the logo, the login page looks very similar, so you might not notice the red flags. But there are, of course, red flags. The first one, of course, you can see, by the way, like another thing that seems secure or let's say gives you a false sense of protection here, right? This is like the first requirement of social engineering. It needs to look good, and in this case, they have a connection is secure in most browser, right? A lot of time the browser only notify you that, hey, this site might be dangerous after someone else reported. But if it's a fresh phishing website recently made, maybe you won't get any kind of alarm from your browser, right? If you're using Firefox or Chrome or Edge, might not get a notification. So it seems secure, the login page looks good, but once you see the actual URL here, if you can see my, I'm not sure you see my mouth here, but it says, right, definitely not the real Amazon URL, right, in the HTTPS, you see, ends with, maybe it looks similar to amazon.fr, but of course it's a different URL. And once I checked the website Whois record, right, I saw, okay, it was created 2 days ago. So obviously, Amazon login page wasn't created 2 days ago, right? And I played with it a bit more. I entered fake credentials, and immediately the website tried to steal more information, including my credit card number and more private information. Okay, so let's have a look at examples of impersonations, right? A lot of time, scammers, social engineers will open a fake page on social media, for example, Facebook. In this case, we have a scammer that opened a page called PayPal customer service. Now you have here a lot of various red flags, right? So first of all, it has only 5 followers, very, very suspicious. And also in the posts in this page, they're doing some kind of a trick, because it seems like from the photo maybe that they have a lot of likes, but of course, and comments, but actually this is like the post itself is a photo of a post with likes and comments, and this post actually has 0 likes and posts and comments. Okay, another example, NatWest is a large bank over at the UK. Okay, and this is their official Facebook page. You can see also in the URL, makes sense. You have the blue check mark in this case, and you also have a very large or relatively large number of followers and likes, as you would expect from an account like this. However, there are other NatWest Facebook accounts. Some might be official, but some are definitely fake. Okay, this one I'm 99.999% sure it's fake, because it's not actual NetWest customer support page, okay, with 0 followers, 0 likes, and another one, right? Both of them are using the same logos and the same background pictures and similar design, but they were created rather recently and have 0 followers, etc. So obviously, we are dealing with fakes, which are probably part of some kind of social engineering scheme. In this case, right, usually the scammers, what they're doing is they're waiting for victim to fall prey via the private messaging. Because once you're in private messaging in some kind of social media, no one besides the two persons who are communicating in the chat can see it, right? So it's their preference. It's easier to take advantage, especially of elderly people, but sometimes if they're sophisticated enough, they can trick basically everyone, right? So in this case of this NetWest fake account, we can see that the victim, right, someone was referenced to this page, right? He or she are asking, hey, I was told to connect with you with this reference number. Okay, and then the scammer says, hey, okay, please check your messenger inbox, which means he or she already started a conversation with this victim via the private messaging option of Facebook, and probably later did something bad. We'll see examples of what could go wrong from the chat in Facebook in a few minutes. Okay, another kind of scam, more classical scam of social engineering I wanted you to consider before we see more examples is something called in Japanese ore ore sagi. Sagi is a scam in Japanese. And you also, by the way, have a nice Netflix show that you can watch on this specific subject. Really recommended to understand this type of scam, but basically, and it's a bit older, right? Less relevant today, but still you have a lot of phone scams as well today. Basically, what they did is they had these scam centers and someone would call an elderly person, usually saying something like, mom, it's me. I need your help. And then like sometimes it would work with some people. And once the victim was hooked, they would move the phone to someone else on the team of the scammer, pretending to be some kind of a lawyer, saying, okay, your son is in trouble, ma'am, you need to do such and so to bail him out or something like that. Or alternatively, act as some kind of a Yakuza or mafia dude, and also threatening to do something to her son or daughter and then get money from the elderly person. So again, another kind of social engineering scheme. I don't think it's all in the past, these kinds of scams. A lot of scams at least have some portions of them still by using phone calls, but it gets rarer as everything is digital now. Okay, we also mentioned baiting. I want to show you a few examples. So a very common form of physical baiting, right? Basically, I want to put something for the victim without being too active and let the victim infect themselves, basically, right? So a good way to do that is, for example, with a USB, an USB that I leave somewhere, right? And a lot of people, they see a USB. Curiosity is a very strong thing, and they will take the USB, they will plug it to their computer or something like that, and the USB can do a lot of things. Some USBs, like this one, for example, is a killer USB. Basically, it fries your computer, right? So once you put it into your computer is gone, right? In a matter of a few seconds. And this is something that hackers and pen testers alike know about and can utilize. Of course, you can also leave some USBs with, right, some kind of tagging, and curiosity will probably work in most cases for a lot of people. And inside this USB, you can put maybe a malware or something like that. Once the user plugs it in, click on something, you might have control over this computer in a matter of a few minutes. Okay, so this is also something very common in social engineering. And it starts as a physical baiting, and then it moves to the digital realm once the threat actors have access. So before I move to a very interesting example, I wanted to talk about the life cycle of, let's say, an ideal social engineering attack. Again, some social engineering could be shorter, briefer, very fast, like in out, but a lot of time, especially the more sophisticated ones, can take a long time. And usually it starts with some kind of reconnaissance, right? The threat actor, the social engineer, start by collecting info on the potential victim or victims, right? By various means. Once they have, enough information, they start to prepare based on the information they found, right? And they can be flexible. They build a story. They build new fake identities, maybe fake accounts on social media, maybe a fake email account. Maybe they purchase a new SIM for a new identity on a, to scam on the phone. They build a story, they prepare, and then they engage with the victim. A lot of time, the first engagement will be short, and they'll see, they'll assess his or her level of, let's say, gullibility, and they'll try to build trust. And then during this engagement, maybe they'll get also a bit of information on the victim, right? A bit more reconnaissance, and then they'll prepare again for another engagement, and so on and so on. Sometimes you can have a lot of engagements during a few weeks before the actual exploitation. Okay, and then they strike, they steal something big, they can steal a lot of money, they can do damage to the organization, and then either, usually they just disappear, right? They just want your money. They don't really care about a lot of other stuff. So better for them to move to another victim. In some cases, however, they will exploit. After that, they could also blackmail, perhaps, right? If they have enough dirt, right, that they collected during the whole social engineering, of course, this whole cycle can continue with the blackmail, and it's even worse. But again, let's say the most common method of social engineering will be to disappear once you exploited the victim. Okay, so let's go into some example in more details, and I hope we'll also have some time for questions. So this is a case from this month. I call it the Ashley Stacy /Karen case. You'll see in a second why. It's from I think 2 weeks ago, something like that. I took all the screenshots, so maybe some of it might still be up in the air. I don't recommend, if you manage to recognize something from the presentation, don't go to any of the websites in this presentation or the fake accounts in these presentations from your personal computer or your organizational computer, just from designated safe machines, right? If you're doing research, don't do it from something that can get compromised. So having said that, I stumbled upon a seemingly fake customer service account for Wells Fargo on Facebook. So this is how it starts. By the way, just saying in advance, this social engineering attempt is not the best one. I'm giving you a relatively bad social engineering example, so we can spot together a lot of the red flags. Sometimes in a better social engineering, maybe you'll have a tiny red flag, but it's really important to catch it. But in order to be vigilant and catch all the small red flags in very sophisticated attacks, you need maybe to start with understanding how it works in less sophisticated attacks or attacks that have a lot of red flags. So obviously, immediately you see the red flags here, like 0 reviews, 0 likes, and 1 follower. some people just maybe go into accounts they don't really notice these kind of things, especially if they are locked outside of their bank account, they are in a hurry, something like that. They were referenced to this page, or maybe someone from this page messaged them directly, could be, and they might miss it. I also did a check. I went to the About page. In most social media pages, in all platforms, you can get some kind of information about the age of the account. And I saw, okay, it was created this month. So again, I assume Wells Fargo didn't just create their customer service account on Facebook, assuming they have one. Next, I saw they were relatively active, and I approached them a few days after January 10th. So, and also they're doing like this shtick that we saw from earlier, right? They're taking a picture of a post from Wells Fargo actual account, but they're taking the picture together with the likes and comments. So it seems like their posts have some kind of traffic, but they don't. Okay, so I started talking with this scammer, right? And after some time, again, this is another red flag that it took them relatively a lot of time to answer, but eventually someone answered. My name is Stacy. How can I help you? Very nice, Stacy. Thanks. And I asked her a few things. I basically told her that I'm locked out of my account and asked for assistance. She promised me that don't worry, our senior specialist, Karen, is already checking my details. Of course, she already asked for my basically a lot of personal information, email address, name, date of birth, and physical address. Now, as I said, again, it's not very a good attempt. You already have a few red flags, I hope, right? Besides what we saw before, but you also see here that Stacy is not very good with English, perhaps. You see, right, from the grammar and from the maybe lack of spaces in the sentence, or at least not very customer-oriented as you would expect. So I gave her the information. She said thanks and got me this link, told me, okay, go there and your problems will be solved, right? Just make a few quick identification on the website, right? And by the way, you saw the link itself, it was shortened. So I wasn't able to see the full URL. So I clicked on it, and of course I didn't straight like right away clicked on it, but if I was the victim, I would have clicked on it and I would go to this website. Another red flag, by the way, that it looks so ugly relatively, right? It has wellsfargo.com on the title of the website, if you can see the upper tab here, but the URL itself completely different website. It's a subdomain on a unrelated website. However, the browser, all the browsers didn't recognize this one as phishing at the time, right? And also it had a SSL security, so it seems SSL certificate, so it seems okay, your connection is secure. And I had I pressed next step, another next step, and again I was asked for all kind of personal details, including my credit card number and CVC. And this is again really weird because usually you first need to log in or use your password and username before you give this kind of information. Again, in the chat, they explained, okay, this is a validation process that we're doing in these cases, but if you're not drunk, you see that you have so much red flags here already. So never put your details in something that looks like this. But the thing is, sometimes social engineering and fake phishing websites, they look much better than this. If you remember that the Amazon website, for example, I showed you before, which was also created during January, it's maybe still out there, looks better, okay? So in this page, I won't even start naming all the bad English and weird like structure of this page. But after that, I was then promoted to go to this page and to enter my bogus username and password. And another big red flag was that while I was typing the password, it was clear text. Usually, normal websites, even normal phishing websites, they hide your password once you start typing it, right? With those black dots, usually black circles or something like that. But here, it wasn't like that, right? The information was not redacted. And after that, I was promoted to another validation process. This time, they asked me to enter the code I received on my phone. Now, this is extremely dangerous. Again, this specific attempt is done very bad, and if someone gave them the code from their phone, I will be very surprised, because it's really a bad attempt. But a lot of social engineering, sometimes they try to bypass multi-factor authentication exactly in this kind of way. First, they get your password and email, and your username and password. But in a lot of cases, it's not enough. They need your multi-factor authentication from your phone usually. So especially in these kind of cases where we're talking about some kind of customer success scam, they'll be with you on the chat, and you'll ask them, hey, do I need to do that? And they'll say, yeah, sure, just give me the code you receive. Or you don't even need to give them the code you receive in this case, because they have access to this website, right? It's not Wells Fargo. Just put here the code, and they, while you're doing all kind of your thing with their website, they have, in the meanwhile, they have all of your details. They have your password, username, and MFA, for which might be good for the next few minutes, right? If the system is really good, only for 60 seconds, but a lot of times it's 10 minutes, something like that. They have enough time to hack into your bank account or whatever they're trying to hack. So I did that. And then eventually, surprise, surprise, they weren't able to verify that this account belongs to me, and they asked me to continue talking with them on the chat. So I acted that I'm very angry, but Stacy or Karen at this point, maybe she had other scams going on at the same time, or maybe she's using some kind of a Google Translate or something like that, but she answered in French. So I acted dumb and said, hey, speak English, right? And she returned to English and tried to make me feel safer and that everything is okay, right? Maybe she wanted to squeeze the lemon more and get more stuff. Obviously, right, I say it again and again, very bad, very big red flag that your customer service representative changes languages mid-chat. But I played with it, right? And after a ping pong between us, she asked me to, in order to help me, right, because they're having problem verifying all of the details, she asked me to download an app called AnyDesk, which is basically some kind of a remote control application. If you put something like this, right, on your computer and give access, right, to the person on the other side, it's more or less game over, because they have control over your computer, and then they can get everything they want. So obviously I didn't do that, right? I invented all kinds of stories, and in the end, I just tried to get more time and get more information out of this scammer. Okay, I won't go into all of the text here, but basically I didn't want to download it, and I tried to continue with the with the scammer in another method. She moved to try to get more information, maybe to see that the information I gave on the phishing website is matching to the information I give now. Okay, so she asked again for my number, for my date of birth, for my credit card number, stuff like that. And in the end, right, I tried getting like more information, basically maybe some kind of a phone number I can get to. I tried to ask her for her real name. I tried to sound like a annoyed customer, basically. But the answer I got is that her name is Ashley Stacy, and I asked for the phone number of her manager or her phone number, but I only got in the end, if you can see it, they just gave me the actual number of Wells Fargo, right? And again, this is also something scammers, they do a lot of time in the fake page or during the chat, they will give you a lot of real links and real information leading to the real websites, and everything will look okay, the phone will work, the links will work, but then one of the links they will give you will be malicious. Okay, so this is also something that they hide the malicious part of the plan in a lot of seemingly legitimate items. Okay, so basically at this point I was a bit bored. I started just bombing them with a lot of scary text, and they blocked me. Okay, just a few minutes after that. However, from another account, I saw that this account was still active for a few more days before it was taken down, right? If you will try to access it now, I'll skip that part. Yeah, if you will try to access it now from any account, hopefully it is still down, right? Facebook took it down, but of course, the scammer will probably open another account, or maybe they opened more than one account in advance. So by the way, I went back to the phishing website, right? The one I showed you before that they used, and I tried to analyze it a bit, right? Went into the directories, and I found also the actual, like the password and username that I filled in before. I found it in the actual, right, files of this website. And by the way, as I said, this is a very bad scam. So they didn't have a lot of victims, but I did find some other victims that probably fell prey to this scam from before, right? Maybe it's fake data, maybe not, but some people might fall prey to this, especially maybe elderly people who are not very tech savvy, right? So it's in the realm of possibility. And of course, some social engineers are much more sophisticated. Okay, so like if we're talking about more sophisticated, let's say, social engineers, you can find a lot of examples of mediocre, but also of real experts in the dark web, in Telegram, in a lot of shady places. Okay, and a lot of time threat actors, they don't say social engineer all the time, just write SE. And one of the most common SE for scammer is against retail organizations, basically, and they are all kinds of refund frauds, right? In these kind of scams, the scammers, basically the fraud is on the employees, and usually some kind of customer support or customer relation employees in these companies, and they get refunds on, let's say, on items that they supposedly ordered and didn't get, but of course they didn't order it, and they just basically steal money from those companies. But of course, they also have more sophisticated social engineering against individuals and organizations for the big bucks, right? So not just petty refund fraud, which again can also be very costly for an organization, because let's say the average refund fraud can be a few hundreds of dollars, and if it's a common tactic that hundreds of threat actors are using, it can translate over time to big losses, especially for not huge businesses. Okay, so here we see an example of Telegram channels. This is a Telegram channel of social engineers, supposedly. And we see here different social engineer promoting themselves and their trade, right? In this case, this social engineer, this scammer, is claiming that he provides assistance with making phishing pages and other kind of social engineering tools, right? Again, you can see the dates. It's all very fresh and active. Another thing that is commonly used in social engineering, of course, is to forge documents, because if you want to impersonate someone, right? Let's say you already has the SSN of the victim and the name of the victim, the full name, everything, and now we want to maybe, I don't know, get a loan under his name, right? So maybe you'll need to make yourself an actual physical SSN card, right? So these are services that you can also find in the dark web, and of course, as I said, the better it looks, right? The social engineering, if they're putting a lot of time and effort, right? And if they have patience, they can build a really nice looking story, and it will be very hard to detect even for experts, right? If you're dealing with expert social engineers, sometimes it can be a really scary thing. Now, this is a very famous or big cybercrime forum, okay? And here, for example, you have a threat actor which has relatively high reputation and a lot of posts over the years, right? And he's offering a social engineering guide, an ebook for other criminals, basically, right? For something like 200 euros, a complete guide on social engineering. And you can see here basically like the content of this guide, right, on different kind of exploitations and method, mostly on refund scam. And even you see other criminals that left positive reviews and telling that these methods indeed work. From my experience, a lot of these methods, like not that I did it, but from customers that I hear are the victim of such attacks, it actually works, right? And a lot of time the threat actors, they also, after a successful social engineering attempt or attack, they publish some kind of proof on those kind of forums or channels between other criminals. So at least some of the times it's working, right? Social engineering is a very serious threat, right? From various, let's say, vectors of attack, both for individuals and for organizations. And now I wanted to have a few minutes before we run out of time, also to talk about more protection tips. I know we already covered a bit of where to look for the red flags and stuff like that, but of course you can also have it summarized in a few points. You can still scan it if you want. By the way, I see that we have at least a few that already clicked and got their Amazon gift card, but of course we have a few more if you still want to. So the first one, I think, is the most important protection tip is pay attention to small details, right? Once you're online doing something with your computer or phone, a lot of time it's better to have an extra second or two just to verify for sure that you're on something you trust, right? So, for example, if I'm trying to go into the Facebook page of my bank, for example, right? This is an Israeli bank. Try to notice the small details before you engage with like a private messaging, right? In this case, only 3 likes, 70 followers, and also the grammar here is a big red flag, or the English, right? Inbox us, and also like they have here, not sure that you see it, the dot and then no space between the Hapoalim and got. So a lot of red flags. Sometimes the red flags can be much smaller, as for example in what we saw in the Amazon page. This is an example of a recent Wells Fargo relatively good-looking phishing page. Okay, it looks much better than the one we saw before here, and also it's secured by SSL, right? So it seems secured. Your browser don't say, hey, this is phishing, but very dangerous. Okay, so red flags in this case: the URL, right, doesn't look like Wells Fargo. Read the URL before you put your credentials in anything. And another red flag, if you want to verify, right, for sure, if the URL you're not totally sure or it looks very familiar to something, you can go directly to some details, right? In this case, I went for the security details on this page, and I saw that I never visited this page before, and I don't have cookies of this website. So if this was, for example, something that you frequent a lot of time from your computer, doesn't make sense that you don't have any kind of history or cookies with this website. Okay, so double checking. Double checking is also important, right? Before you're about to click on a suspicious link or something like that, like if you have some kind of a shortened URL, right? In this case, this is the URL I gave you in the previous slides, right? For the free Amazon gift card from Bitly, right? So it's some kind of a URL shortening service. But in this case, for example, in Bitly, always if you see a Bitly link, you can add a plus, and then you will see from Bitly where this specific link leads to, right? In this case, this is a YouTube video, never gonna give you up, of course. But in other cases, right, scammers and social engineers, they can use shortened links, like in the examples we saw of Ashley Stacy. They gave me a link, and I didn't know what's in this link until I checked it and saw, okay, it's leading to a very suspicious website. But if you don't know and you just click on it, it's a bit like a Russian roulette. Okay, you have other ways to check unknown URLs. You have various services online that you can just very easily see where the URL leads to. Okay, and by the way, right, from my Bitly account, I could see, okay, how many people actually clicked on the links, right, or how many scans were for the QR code, and from which countries, right? So, for example, in some services of URL shortening, you can also see the IP addresses of the victim, and this is part of can be a part of their reconnaissance phase, but also an active part of the exploitation in some cases. And by the way, QR scam, this is something that can also be very physical, right? We have a lot of recent examples in which scammers are putting fake QR codes on parking meters, for example, right? So this is the physical part of the social engineering. And then the digital part is that you scan, right? You think, oh, this is a part of the payment method of this parking meter, and you scan this fake QR code. I mean, the QR code is working, but it leads you to a fake website, and you'll pay your money to the scammer instead to the maybe, your municipality. Okay. And we also have recent FBI warnings about scammers using fake QR codes. So this is something that is also rather common nowadays. Further tips to protect yourself. First of all, get a strong security team. Of course, this is not just for social engineering, but as an organization, right? If you're trying to protect your organizations from various cyber threats, this is the basic level, right? Have strong people working on cybersecurity, protecting your organization from within. After that, it's important to raise awareness to all employees and also customers, depending on the organization, and to do it not just once, but as a routine, or have some kind of awareness plan, right? To like ongoing awareness program for all employees for these kinds of attacks, which are becoming more and more common. Of course, and I'm also a bit biased, right? But get a good real-time threat intelligence solution provider to help you gather external information on your organization on various threats that can target your employees and customers, phishing websites, fake social media accounts, a lot of other very bad stuff, but since we're dealing with social engineering, these are the common vectors that you need to monitor. And of course, it's important to mitigate existing threats. So once you actually find a phishing website that is targeting your organization or your employees or your customers, take it down, right? Take down the fake phishing website, take down the fake social media accounts, and usually scammers and bad guys, they will go to the next target once they see, okay, this organization is well protected and everything I put up, they take down. They'll move to a different target. Of course, part of the mitigation could be, especially if you have a threat intelligence provider, gather more information about the scammers and then maybe not only take down the actual threat, but also find the individuals behind it and making sure that they are behind bars or at least legally charged for their crimes. And I also seen recent examples of that, which is good. Now, a bit about Cyberint before I go to some Q&As. As I said, we give impactful external intelligence for organizations to remove risks from various fronts. We have over 130 experts from all over the world in the US, Israel, Japan, Philippines, Singapore, Europe, various places, and we have a lot of large organizations that we give our services to. And the mission here, right, is to give the most impactful and relevant intelligence to the organization. So we focus on two main spheres, right, of intelligence gathering. So first is your organization side, right? All of your assets. We have what is called ASM, an attack surface monitoring tool, which helps you map everything that is exposed and potentially could be exploited by threat actors. And on the other side, we also cover a lot of different sources via classic threat intelligence mechanism and automation, right? And then we bring you the most critical risk via our platform for you to mitigate, right? So in terms of social engineering, we need to understand what are the pain points of the organization via the ASM and help you find all of the relevant phishing websites. For example, right, if your asset is, let's say, Amazon.com, right? And so the ASM finds all the relevant domains and IPs, and then our phishing mechanism will help you see, okay, these are phishing websites that are targeting your customers or employees. And we can also, of course, help to mitigate those threats by taking them down for you. So this is really a little bit about us. I'm finishing, Elizabeth, in a second. Of course, if you want to hear more about us, you can visit our website or this QR code. I promise this one is not a Rickroll. And by the way, just like another tip that you can implement, for example, in the organization, to have some kind of a mechanism that if you're pressing some kind of a link on a file, especially external files, anything like that, you'll get a warning. Are you sure that you want to go to this URL? And then it's like another safeguard. Okay, so I think we're done. Thank you for joining me. And I think we have maybe a few minutes for question, Elizabeth. Correct me if...
Yes, we do, Guy. An excellent presentation. And we do have a question coming in from our attendee in just the few minutes that we have remaining. I want to see if you can just touch a little bit more on AI and your thoughts on AI. And do you think that's going to have a big impact to change social engineering? And how do you prevent that?
Sure. So I would say AI is already being exploited in some ways or being used for social engineering, because we can see a lot of activities and evidence that threat actors are already using stuff like ChatGPT, right? Mainly ChatGPT now, to, for example, help them design better phishing websites, help them design better malware variants, which are harder to detect. But also, just like in the example we saw before, right? We had in the example I gave with Wells Fargo customer service, the answers they gave were not very professional, a lot of red flags there. But of course, if once social engineers will start relying more and more on, for example, ChatGPT, the answer they will give are will turn to be much more convincing, and it will be a lot harder to detect red flags. Maybe the game will be trying to see, okay, this was an automated response, but of course, again, the problem will be that perhaps real customer service representative will also use AI, so it wouldn't look too suspicious. But uh, I think we'll have less and less red flags due to AI, especially in good cases of social engineering, right? In successful cases. So we need to be even more vigilant and more careful in the upcoming future, basically.
Thank you so much. Attendees, I want to let you know that if we didn't have time for your question, Dr. Almog has made himself available to you. You can reach out to him, of course, with questions that you might have or more information about Cyberint. And I want to go back to you, Doctor, in just a minute, but first I want to let our attendees just remember that we'd love for you to follow us across our social media platforms. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also listen to the Knowledge Group podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud, and you'll find out a little bit more about what we are working on for future events. And again, we want to thank our sponsor and speaker for your assistance with this event today, and of course, all attendees for joining us. In just about the minute we have, I want to turn the floor back over to Guy for any final thoughts you might like to share with our attendees.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you also, Elizabeth. Final thought, I'll just say be careful and vigilant and always check twice. This is happening every day, everywhere, and a lot of people lose a lot of money and sometimes more than money. So just stay safe.
Thank you so much. That does conclude our webcast. Trust me, I'm an engineer, escaping the traps of social engineering. On behalf of our sponsor, speaker, myself, and our entire Knowledge Group team, we do hope you've enjoyed our webcast today, and we look forward to having you join us for the next one. Thank you all so much. Take care, and goodbye.